Greetings and salutations, everybody. Just a disclaimer before we start this video. I know this is really different from my usual content, but if you remember my last update, you'll know that I've been a volunteer in the World of Warcraft roleplay community for a few years now. This year, I was invited on to talk about my roleplay niche at the Tournament of Ages, an annual event for charity benefiting Blessings in a Backpack that is hosted on Moonguard every August. We're currently sitting at over $20,000 raised for charity, and it's only our second day. You can check our Tiltify out by accessing the link in the description down below. Even if this isn't your cup of tea, I do hope you'll consider donating and recognize the passion and care that goes into hosting this event every year. Enjoy the interview, and thank you so much for watching.
Yes, welcome to the stream, our Mechagnome rep, Intamin. I hope I'm right.
You are, yes, you're one of the few to actually say it right. Hello, salutations.
Hello, salutations indeed.
Welcome, Indaman.
Hi, nice to see you, Jam.
Nice to see you too.
So if you want to do a little introduction, tell us who you are, all that sort of fun stuff, a little bit about you or your character.
Yeah, sure thing. So, my name is Elliot. I operate under the name Songs and Sorcery as a digital artist, content creator, and roleplayer in the World of Warcraft community. I've been a creative on Moonguard for over 10 years, and I have actually been playing WoW since vanilla. I attended the very first Tournament of Ages. This is, I believe, my ninth one. I believe it's our ninth year.
Wow.
And this is my second year returning as the Mechagonian cultural representative. I play Intamin Diverl. He's a Mechagonian doctor who came to the mainland after he was dissatisfied with the unification of Gnomergon and Mechagon following the death of their king. He's very openly outspoken about Mechagon's government and is critical about the acceptance of a new monarch so soon after their coup. I'm also the Guildmaster of Darkland's Finest, which is a carnival performance and merchant guild that has been serving Moonguard for over 3 years. And I am one of the owners behind the United Gnome Gnetwork, which is a general interest Discord serving the Gnome roleplay community across multiple realms, including Moonguard.
Yeah, Dark Moon's
Love
finest.
it.
Let's go.
That's incredible.
Love all of that. So yeah, you attended the first Tournament of Ages. So it's been a while. This is our 10th Tournament of Ages. So
I did, yes. On the Instagram a few months ago, they posted then and now, and they posted a picture from I think like 2016. And the pink-haired gnome all the way on the left of the picture is my continent main that I actually still play today.
That is so cool.
That's really cool.
We're gonna dive into these questions that we had pre-sent to you. So obviously the first question up is what made you choose Mechagnome?
All right, so believe it or not, I actually really hated mechagnomes when they were first announced. I've been maining gnomes since Cataclysm, so when the initial Junker gnome file names were data mined, I was super excited. Up until then, the last major lore development we'd gotten was their starting zone refresh, if you could even call it that, back in Cataclysm. There's not much to show from that refresh because Gnomergon is still a lobby dungeon that has yet to be reclaimed as a proper faction capital for gnomes. When they released the model concepts for Mechagnomes, I was super underwhelmed and honestly even a little angry. It felt like we'd waited years to get what was a joke race with unusual customizations that overwrote the existing lore of the old War Mechagnomes. It was only when I played through the quest campaign that I realized how cool they were, particularly because their culture was so distinct from Gnomergon gnomes. I really liked that these were a faction of gnomes that had a surprisingly dark story, filled with political melodrama, a corrupt monarchy, and rebellion. Gnomes are a race typically associated with reason, and we were shown them in the midst of a guerrilla war. And I thought that was super fascinating. I decided to create my initial character concept based on a joke, and it kind of snowballed from there, and he is now my roleplay main.
Heck yeah. Would you say that a lot of like cultural aspects of Mechagnomes is what makes you so passionate about them, or is there something else that gives you the passion to roleplay a Mechanome?
So it's definitely the cultural aspects. I just feel like they're super fascinating. They're so different from other gnomes. Gnomes are typically shown to be very community focused. You very rarely will see a selfish Gnomergon gnome, but Mechagon gnomes are typically self-serving. They're very arrogant. They're more focused on like individual like perfection and sort of like an overarching theme of like titanic perfection versus pursuing their own creations and their own passions. I also think them still holding on to a monarchy is really interesting. If you look at Mechagon's lore, they're about 400 years displaced from Nomergon. It was a small section of Nomergon gnomes that left with the king to find a land of technological marvels. So technically, Mechagon has been in this little bubble and shows how gnomish culture might have been like 400 years ago. And I think that's really interesting. We don't really see that with gnomes especially. They've kind of been relegated to a joke race, and I think that's just a really interesting way to take their lore.
Yeah, gnomes definitely have gotten the not great end of the stick when it comes to lore, but seeing Mechagon as a whole, especially when doing like the intro to the allied race, just being able to walk around the city and see a bunch of stuff, even doing the whole Rust Bowl like revolution storyline really adds so much flavor to what I think is much needed expansion of gnome in general for their lore.
Yeah, for sure.
And like you said, mechagnomes are kind of all about augmenting themselves to like this perfect being, right? With all the mechanical thing, it's like each person to be their own perfect sort of self, and that's what a lot of the augments to do.
Well, if you look at the lore, it's less about individual perfection. It's more about perfection of the Titans' designs. The lore of the gnomes was that they were originally created as custodians for Murmuron, the Grand Architect, who is a member of the Titanic Pantheon. So they were originally created as his custodians, and then obviously the old gods happened, and they were affected by the curse of flesh. And King Mechagon's, at least in terms of like the Archforged, which are the loyalists, their idea is that they want to replace parts of themselves to get rid of the curse and return back to their original designs. They believe that Azeroth as a whole should return to Titanic perfection, which is a plan that would involve the eradication of races that are not Titan forged, which is why we're set to stop them in the Rust Bowl resisted storyline.
That's so
It
interesting.
really is.
Yeah.
I never knew that before. That's
Yeah.
so interesting.
So that's my goal with kind of role-playing a Mechagnome. I feel like people don't realize how interesting and fascinating their storyline is and the themes that are present. And it's kind of like my goal on Moonguard to show people just how cool Mechagnomes really are.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people at first kind of just looked at them and were like, "Oh, look, diaper gnome," kind of like trolling on, but they're just really interesting out.
For sure.
Agreed.
Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I was just saying agreed. I love gnomes. I have a normal. I don't have a mechagnome, obviously, but I do really like just gnomes in general. I'm yet to roll a mechagnome. It's on my list.
Yeah, you got Gidget.
Gidget, yeah, my chaos gnome.
No,
I gotta say, Indy, you really have a great way of making them sound super interesting.
They are interesting. They are interesting.
This is one of the great things about the race rep Q&A is we get to find out much more about the races than we previously had known, right? Because everyone else kind of knows their race better than others might, and has a lot of awesome things today about the mechagnomes that's actually making me be like, I need to roll a mechagnome.
Oh, for sure.
So
Right?
mechagnomes being an allied race, obviously don't have many classes set to them in game wise. So there's still a lot that could be added in terms of what to play as a mechagnome. Is there anything either in World of Warcraft or outside, maybe from another RPG, you'd like to see given to the mechagnomes as a class?
Yeah, so one of the reasons why Mechagon is so fascinating to me is that it's essentially a theocratic monarchy that pretty obviously mirrors a cult. These are people that worship the Titans to the point where they ritualistically replace parts of themselves in the pursuit of perfection. They're very overtly religious, especially for gnomes. I think that's a perfect reason for them to be paladins. I think this aspect of their culture, that being their veneration of Mirmoron, is woefully underutilized in lore, especially when you so rarely see religion tackled in gnomish narratives. Paladins embodying ideals from individual titans would add a lot of interesting flavor to both the class and Mechagonian lore, especially as we've had people questioning the lore justification of Nomerganian priests since their initial release.
Okay.
I
That's
like that. I
cool.
like that. Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be a really good addition. That's technically, I think, all for the prepared questions we have. Jam, Perry, do you have anything else that you'd like to hear?
About about
Go ahead.
gnomes. About gnomes, no, not really. I mean, you speak with such passion for the little guys, and I really like that because I feel that, especially in roleplay, that a lot of the times that gnomes get cast in a bad light or are constantly seen as the butt of the joke, and it's really nice to see people who have such passion for both gnome races and just gnomes in general. I'm here for it.
Thank you. I do think there were two questions that were missed that are on my list right here.
Okay.
The first one was what makes me so passionate about them in particular.
Yes, what makes you so passionate about them in particular?
So, as I mentioned, gnomes from Mechagon are extremely culturally distinct from the Gnomergon cousins. Up until Mechagon's release, gnomes were pretty much relegated to being a joke race with one-note personalities. We all know the archetype they're usually associated with. They're usually wacky tinker types. They're typically punted, made the butt of short jokes. But in Mechagon, we were shown a city in the throes of a rebellion. Despite the slapstick and humorous tone of their zone, Mechagon's story follows a people who are so intent on venerating their maker that they will go to great lengths to harm themselves and others to align Azeroth in his image. Gnomergon gnomes are characterized as being supportive, meticulous, and affable, but Mechagon gnomes are typically self-serving, arrogant, judgmental, and destructive. I just think it's such a fantastically cool place to take what was before then a race that was overwhelmingly one note in the scope of WoW's narrative. I take a lot of satisfaction in exploring that cultural identity and showing others in the community that they are a distinct, fascinating faction in their own right. In the last interview that you guys had with the race rep, Brambles, they mentioned something about spite being a motivating factor. That's kind of similar to how I feel about mechagnomes. Mechagnomes are kind of sitting in the sweet spot of having a really strong identity with good bones to build off of. But there's enough wiggle room there where you can really do a lot with character concepts and homebrew lore, allowing you to expand where Blizzard has failed to. I genuinely think they're one of the best races in game for getting creative, and it's been a lot of fun seeing what the community has come up with to fill in those gaps.
Very, very well said. I think Blizzard is missing out on so much when it comes
for
to
sure.
gnomes in general. Like, they could do so much more and give us so much more in terms of about them, because they are really like both mechagnomes and gnome are an amazing race to like have in the game, especially with like their culture and everything. It enriches it. So learning more about them would be great.
I agree. And favorite lore character.
Ooh, yes. How did I miss
So-
that one?
You're
I was
good.
just-
So, I mean, I don't blame you because that's a really tricky question. Just because there's so few lore characters, I would say I'd have to think about it, but that's a lie because I'm genuinely so obsessed with the small amount of lore we have that I came up with the answer pretty much immediately. Rust Bolt is
Alright.
full of a lot of interesting side characters and quest text, but I think my favorite is in the dungeon itself. Head Machinist Sparkflux is the tender of the Machinist Garden, which is a recreational space within Mechagon City that doubles as a death trap to anyone looking to approach the High Tinkeratory, which is where King Mechagon resides. Sparkflux is the only unmechanized gnome we see in Mechagon, and he's one in a position of power that's aligned with the Arcforged, no less, who obviously they espouse self-modification in order to pursue perfection. He's not really interesting on his own. He's kind of just a one-note, nothing burger boss. But I think what he represents is really interesting. He raises a lot of questions like, what's his story? Why is he unmechanized? Why hasn't he been deemed worthy of earning upgrades despite being one of the king's last lines of defense? Does he want to be mechanized? I know the answer is likely that mechagnome models don't have a lot of customization, which is why they might have opted for an unmechanized model. But I just think that his existence opens up a lot of interesting speculation for what it means to be a Mechagonian, and shows that mechagnomes aren't the monolith that they are often treated as by both Blizzard and the roleplay community.
That's really interesting.
I never even realized that gnome in particular wasn't mechanized.
He's not. It's so weird, and he's wearing like Death Knight tier, which like that's I was looking not tier. He's wearing like the Death Knight starting zone armor. So when I was looking at him, I'm like, they're probably using the armor to represent that he's like maybe like fully mechanized from like the neck down. But I think it's so much more interesting to wonder like why is this gnome, this one singular gnome, because it's only that one guy.
Right.
So it makes you wonder like why did they go out of their way to make this gnome look like that? It's just a really, really weird decision.
Especially with how
He is
like
too.
yeah, and especially with how like King Mechagon is just wanting to fully mechanize everybody. It's really weird that like his highest defender.
Yeah, like I don't know why they just didn't like shove him in the Mechagon heritage armor, maybe with like a different helmet or something. It's just super fascinating. I think it's really interesting.
Actually wild and has me thinking so much about that dungeon now and like what little bits I've missed. Like
It's a really good dungeon. I highly recommend running through it with fresh eyes after this interview if you don't have any plans to.
definitely gonna take my time and like meticulous go through that dungeon now at some point after TOA. That is wild. Okay.
Love it.
now I know that we got every question this time around.
Yeah,
So sorry about that. I can't believe I
you're
missed
good. Don't
those
worry
two.
about it.
You're making me want to go back and do that dungeon again.
So Avelfina has a question in the Twitch chat if you want to answer this.
Yeah, what's up?
So here's a fun question: the Northrend Mechagnomes and the Mechagon Mechagnomes, do you consider them the same race? Like, for example, the Eridar and the Draenei, since one is fully mechanized and one isn't, or do you consider one singular Mechagnome?
Well, at the end of the day, they all came from Mirmaron, so technically, yes, they are the same, I guess, race, in the same way that, you know, you could argue, like, are all dwarves earthen. But I think culturally they're completely distinct. Obviously, as I said, mechagnomes themselves kind of, like Mechagonian mechagnomes, kind of existed in a bubble for 400 years. I've been arguing for people to make them completely distinct from Nomergon gnomes. I feel like a lot of people kind of lump them together when they're completely different. As I said, their mannerisms are different, their culture's different. One's a meritocracy, whereas another one was a monarchy that only just became, uh, you know, similar meritocracy to Nomergon. So I wouldn't lump them together. I think both. I think like all three of them are completely different. Ulduar mechagnomes versus Nomergon mechagnomes and Mechagonian mechagnomes are just completely different.
Very well said. Hopefully
Yeah, great.
that answers your question fully, Avelfina. I think it was really in. So I think it. Harry, do you have anything else?
No, you answered all my questions about gnomes and just seeing someone so passionate about the race they play and know so much about it. It's just nice to see gnomes getting the love that they deserve.
Jam?
I have no questions. I want to learn so much more though. Like I gotta go play this dungeon again and see all the things that you just mentioned. It all went over my head.
Definitely recommend checking it out. I'm always around too to answer Mechagnome questions. As I said, I do run the United Gnome Network. We're always looking for ways to help new Gnome role players. I know that Gnome roleplay can feel very inaccessible, so we're always around. I'm always open to receiving inquiries regarding how to roleplay a Mechagnome or even just a Gnomergon Gnome. They're a lot of fun.
Well, that will bring one question I do have is how do we get into or find out more about the United Gnome Network?
The United Gnome Network. I don't advertise it publicly. We haven't advertised publicly in quite a while, but I am
Mhm.
under most social media as Songs and Sorcery. You can find me there. That's songs like singing and sorcery. I'm always open to receiving messages, DMs, inquiries, and I am also in the Tournament of Ages Discord under Frostflinger if anybody wants to reach out to me about it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Indy.
You're very welcome, guys. Thank you so much for having me on.
It was a pleasure, and we learned so much. I'm actually like gonna go make a Mechagnome now.
Yes, absolutely. I highly recommend it. It's the most fun you'll have, and they have the best racials in the game.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Enjoy your Tournament of Ages.
You too. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Take care.
You.
Have a good tournament.